Welcome to Cool Jobs. Today's guest is Tanya Dalton. You may have seen her on Good Morning America or heard her interview guests on her hit podcast, The Intentional Advantage. She's a best-selling author, motivational public speaker, and entrepreneur. In today's interview, Tanya and I will discuss how she's built her career, what purposeful productivity means, and how we can all take our time back. Without further ado, please enjoy. I imagine that you didn't just graduate college and start speaking nationally and running a multi-million-dollar company. What was your career path leading up to where you are now?
Oh my gosh, that's such a loaded question. And yes, in fact, if you had asked me back when I graduated college what I would be doing, I never would have guessed this, quite frankly. I mean, this is the thing. This is following the path that is presented to you a lot of times and seeing the opportunities and the choices. I graduated from college with a degree in English. So I was an English major, a history minor with an elementary education certification. So
Mm.
I graduated college and I went and I taught school. I was a school teacher, an elementary school teacher. And that's what I thought I was going to do was be a teacher. And then I met my husband. I had my son Jack, and I thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. So I started off thinking, okay, yep, this is what I'm going to do. And so while I was a stay-at-home mom, I started this little side business just kind of for fun as something to do other than just being a mom. And I started with $50 because it was just supposed to be this little side business. And at the time, my husband John did international marketing for Fortune 500 companies. And so he would literally buy a ticket called the Around the World ticket. He would leave our home in Dallas, Texas, and he would go and he would circle the globe and come back the other side. So he'd be gone for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And I was having a conversation with him. He was on the other side of the planet. And I was telling him all the things that the kids were doing and all the things that were going on. And he got really, really quiet. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I'm missing everything. I'm missing all the milestones. I'm missing all the moments with the kids. I'm missing all these things." And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, we have to change this, right? I hung up the phone with him and I stood in my bright yellow kitchen that night and I made a really big, audacious goal. I decided I was going to grow that side business. I had started for $50. I was going to grow it to absorb his MBA income that he was making, which is, 6 figures at the time. Now, keep in mind, I had never started a business or run a business. I had never worked in a business. I was a teacher, and I had never even taken a single business course in college, not even one. And yet I set that goal for myself. And I sat down and I mapped out how I was going to do it. And within a year, I was able to make that happen. So I
Wow.
grew that business from $50 to 6 figures within that first year. And it was great because it gave us a lot of freedom, time freedom, lifestyle freedom, financial freedom, all kinds of freedoms. And, I loved that part of the business. It's what allowed us to move here to Asheville, North Carolina. And when I was here, after about a year, I decided I wanted to change businesses. Like I loved my husband, I loved working with him, but I didn't love what we were doing. So we can talk about that later, but I scrapped that first business, started up my second business, scaled it to 7 figures in less than 18 months with just me and my husband basically running the whole thing.
Wow.
And it was because I was finding that people weren't truly being productive, right? As I was running my first business, people would say, "Well, how are you doing this? How is this possible?" And I would say, "Well, I'm just doing these things." And they would say, "Oh, they had no idea." And I realized this is one of the gifts that I have is to really understand how to work with my time and how to prioritize and those types of things. And so I scaled that business. And before you knew it, we were selling products in Office Depot and Office Max and Barnes and Noble and all these different places. And so that's when I decided to start my podcast. I started my podcast. And about 8 months after I started my podcast, I had publishers reaching out to me asking me to write books. And so then I start writing books. And then, it's
Wow.
just how one thing leads to the next. And so, yeah, it's kind of a long answer. But I think that's how life works, right? Like these opportunities are presented to us, and they may not
Mm.
be what we thought we were going to do, but I'm so glad I'm here doing what I get to do.
What was the education? Was there any education that you needed to start that path, to start
Yeah,
that first business from that side project?
that's a good question. And I think this is the thing. People can get really caught up in like, I have to get this training or I have to do these things. I think the thing with me is I ask a lot of questions. I mean, when my kids have friends come over, like the first thing they say before they walk in the doors, my mom's going to ask a lot of questions, so just be prepared. Because I do. I'm fascinated by people and I'm fascinated by things. And I'm not afraid to look dumb. I'm not afraid to say, wait, how do you do that? Or wait, what did you do here? Or what is this? I think a lot of people live in fear of how other people are going to think of them if they don't know what they're doing. And the truth is, nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just trying to figure it out. And the smartest people are the ones who ask the questions. And I say that as a person who asks a lot of questions. So, but that's the thing is there was no fear for me in calling up somebody or, going to, meet somebody and saying, how did you do this? How does this work? What did you do? And with that first business, there was a lot of science involved with it because was selling jewelry. Just so you know, I was selling jewelry, but what I was doing is I was taking photographs and I was embedding it into the jewelry, making heirloom
Mm.
quality keepsakes. So people would get pictures of like their kids from when they were little. And it was a way for me to take my kids with me. This is before, phones were a big thing where we carried pictures in our back pockets. And so I had to learn how this coding would work. I started off with what I could get at like Hobby Lobby, and then I knew that wasn't good enough. I needed to make it better. I have no science background. I don't know what I'm doing. I called and I spoke to manufacturers of different types of resins. I called and spoke to dentists who use dental resin. I spoke to a guy who makes resin for surfboards. I called somebody who makes resin for, I mean, like all these different people, and I just asked questions. And here's the truth. People love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about what they're passionate about. So when you're asking them questions, they're more than happy to answer. They're more than happy to like share all their knowledge and their wisdom because that's fun for them. So that was really my education was like, going out, asking the questions, figuring things out. So you ask questions of people, and you know what? You ask Google a lot of questions. Google is not going to judge you if you ask the same question 5 days in a row, right? Or if you keep asking it. I think the main thing is, though, you give yourself a container in order to ask the questions, and in order to train, or in order to figure things out. Instead of just having that being ongoing and forever, it was like, okay, I'm going to give myself a month to really map out how this is going to work and ask a lot of questions to figure things out. And then I need to start moving. And so that
Mm.
really helped me. That's some of that productivity in there, right?
Hmm.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. I like how you give yourself time to figure it out and then move on. Because
Mhm.
in my own experience, with this podcast or with school, I find that like writing papers, especially, like I get stuck in that period where I'm asking questions and then
Mhm.
I lack the forward push to process that into reality.
Yeah. Well, I call it a container, and I talk about this a lot when I'm talking about productivity, which was my second business, was starting a productivity business. I call it a container because in my mind's eye, I picture it like a Tupperware container or something. It's got these high sides. So you have a start time, you go in, you go deep, and then you have an end time. And I think that end time is the main thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to give myself till this date to just ask questions and to research and to get caught up in all of that. But at this point, at the end of this container, I'm going to get up and get out.
Mm.
It's really easy though to keep reworking things or keep asking questions, right?
Hmm.
I love this quote. I've written a couple of books, and there's this quote that really helped me. I don't know who it's from, but they said, books are never finished, they're eventually abandoned. Because
Huh.
the truth is, when you're writing a book, or maybe you're writing a song, or you're doing a painting, or you're working on a project, or you're creating a presentation, we can always tweak it. We can always make it better. And the person we become at the end of that project is different from the person we were at the beginning. So that person at the end sometimes is like, oh, I wish I had done this, or I could change this. We could spend forever tweaking and retweaking and over perfecting our work. But by having that container, it says, all right, we got to stop. Time to move on, get to something else, right? And get the wheels turning.
Mm. How did you come about to writing the book? What was the process for that?
Okay, so here's what's funny is so I mentioned I had been doing the podcast 7, 8 months, and I've always wanted to write a book. When I was in the sixth grade, I wrote a book called Aunt Liza's Treasure for my sixth grade English project. And I remember thinking, I would love to be an author someday. And, thinking, oh, that's something maybe I'll do one day. And so it was always in the back of my mind, like maybe I'll write a book, maybe I'll write a book. And every year, as we get closer to the end of the year, I'd ask myself, like, maybe I could write a book this year. And I'd always say, no, I don't have time. I'm not going to do it. And so I had done that the year that the publishers reached out. I had said, I'm not going to write a book. And then 2 weeks later, a publisher reached out to me. Hey, we would love for you to write a book. And I was like,
Mm.
so strange. 3 weeks later, a second publisher reaches out. We want you to write a book. And I was like, okay, I know how the universe works. This means I need to write a book. But I told both those publishers no. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I want to write a book on my own terms. I want to write about what I want to write about. But I took that as a sign as this is the time for me to dive into this. And I didn't know what I was doing. Once again, you know, I didn't know what I was doing, just like I didn't with my first business, just like I didn't with my second business. It was like, how do I figure this out? What's the first thing I need to figure out? Okay, how does it work if you have an agent? All right, I need
Mm.
to find an agent. And I start just like finding out, okay, what's the smallest step I can take to get myself started? And then building that momentum. And then I knew I wanted the book to be about productivity and the way that I define productivity, which is very different than how most of the world defines productivity. And so it was really me sitting down and mapping that out. I wanted to go through the whole book proposal and be really honest about this is how I want to talk about things. And what's funny is when I did that, I ended up with 7 offers from publishing houses. My book went to auction and they were bidding on the book. And so I
Mm.
got a fantastic advance, like more than you should get as a first-time author, because I think because it was such a different and a fresh perspective, and it was, the way that I had done it all. So yeah, it's about not just saying yes, it's like, yes, but I want it done this way and being really clear with what I desire. That really has always helped me tremendously.
Mm. What advice would you have for someone who's looking to do entrepreneurial, to build their own business, but is too afraid by all the hurdles?
Mm. Yeah, it's easy to get overwhelmed and to be daunted by the hurdles because there's a lot and it can be difficult. I think we have this whole vision of entrepreneurship as being this like, oh, you're your own boss and it's easier. And it's like, yeah, you're your own boss because everything's dependent on you. And so it can be a lot. So I would say, honestly, my advice is if you're interested in being an entrepreneur, get your feet wet. Start small. Don't think you're going to go all in and grow a business right away because that's not necessarily true for everyone. And I think it's really helpful. Like my son, Jack, is interested in perhaps running his own thing. And I was telling him, I would really advocate for you to go and do a traditional job while you're kind of in the background doing this on the side so you can gain some experience, you gain some knowledge, not just about, how things work in an office, but what kind of leaders do you like? Who do you want to emulate? What kind of boss are you going to want to be? You learn a lot from your environment. So I would say, don't be afraid. Look at those hurdles as opportunities, right? They're
Mm.
opportunities to prove to yourself that you can do things. I think anything worth doing is a challenge, right? And we can
Mm.
look at it as something that scares us, or we can feel that emotion in our bodies and recognize that fear and excitement are exactly the same. So reframing it and saying, I'm really excited about it. Yeah, my palms are sweaty and my stomach hurts a little bit, but that's the same way I feel at the top of a roller coaster, right? That excitement of what's to come. So that's what I would say. Don't be afraid. Ask a lot of questions, try and start small. You don't have to have a multi-million-dollar business to start.
Mm.
Start just, marketing whatever you have to friends and family and saying, hey, who do you know? Or do you know anyone who could open this door for me? Ask
Mm.
people. That's the biggest mistake people make is they think they have to do everything on their own, that they have to have it all figured out and they don't need any help. And the truth is anyone who's done anything has not done it alone. Generally
Mm.
there's a support around them, right? Whether that's friends or family or people they've met along the way, professors, mentors. People are generally very willing to open up and share their wisdom with you.
Mm. I'm interested about the fear and excitement. when you are going up to talk to crowds of hundreds or crowds of thousands of people, how do you incorporate that advice? Would you have similar advice for just pushing past the fear, or what would your advice be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did the Today Show about a year and a half ago, and people were like, "Were you so nervous before you went live? Because that's in front of millions of people." And I was like, "No, not at all. Like I think it's so fun." And you do have to back up and realize that I've been performing in front of like thousands of people since I was like 5 years old. So I was always on stages. I did like major productions of like musicals, and I was doing commercials and all kinds of things when I was younger. So I think part of it is for me, it's already a muscle that I've built. But I also recognize and realize that the people who are asking you the questions, they're just people, just like you, right? They get up in the morning and they brush their teeth and, they make mistakes and they back their car into to a pole. They do all kinds, right? Just like you and I. And so if you recognize and realize these are just regular people, I'm just having a conversation, it makes it so much easier. I think the other thing that makes it easier is I am so passionate about what I do. Like I love it. I could talk about it for hours because it makes me really happy. And I love it when people get excited about what I'm talking about. So I think with anything you do, if you're not passionate about it, it's easier to let the fear set in. I'm
Mm,
willing to overcome the fear because I believe in what I do, right? So when something scares me, I think, but if I don't do this, I'm not going to get the message out, or
mm,
people won't know about it, right? And I think that's bigger than me. The impact I'm able to make is so much bigger and greater than that fear. And in my book, my second book, I talk about the number of people that we impact in our lives. And I think most people think, especially if you're just like, I don't have an Instagram following, I'm just a regular everyday person, we think that we aren't going to make a big impact. And the truth is, when I did the research into this, every single person on this planet is able to impact 80,000 people over the course of their life. So if you think about it, we meet on average maybe three new people a day, right? Some days more, some days less, right? Some days you go to a conference or you join a new class and you meet a bunch of people. Some days you meet less, but on average, about three people a day.
mm.
People a day, 365 days a year for about 78 years. That's 80,000 people. So we all have an impact we're going to make. So what do you want that impact to be? And are you going to let your fear hold you back from making that difference? When you ask
Mm.
yourself that question, it's easier to look at my fear as just an annoyance. That's fine. It'll be okay.
Are there any tips and reminders that you have that you say to yourself when you forget those wise words?
Well, honestly, like I wrote my first book and it was really well received. It was named a top 10 business book of the year by Fortune magazine, which is a huge accomplishment for someone who'd never taken a business course, right? So when
It's a huge
I
accomplishment in general.
it really was. It was amazing. Um, but when I sat down to write my second book, I felt really I felt really stuck or maybe really stymied. I felt like, well, this is not very good. Like what I was writing wasn't as good as what I had finished up with The Joy of Missing Out, my first book, which had gone through edit after edit after edit. And each time you're editing, it's refining itself. So one of the things I wrote for myself is I put a post-it note next to my computer and I wrote, "This is a first round draft," which means I have full permission for this to be just a pile of crap, that it's not going to be any good, that I know it's going to need edits, but the main thing is to get it out on paper. And I think that's a good mantra for life. This is a first round draft. We're all figuring things out. So the first time you do something, it's not going to be great. It might really stink. Second time, it'll get maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse. Third time, probably a little bit better. Fourth time, better. And then as you continue to hone it, it's going to get so much better. And the problem is, so often we're looking at people's final drafts when we're on our first round draft, and we think, I should be there, or I should be better. I should be doing these things. And the truth is, you're on a learning process. You're going to get better. You're going to get better every time you stretch that muscle. You're going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And so allow yourself to remember that this is a first round draft. It's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay if I write an entire page and then I just hold down the delete button and delete the entire page. Happens sometimes, you know? So yeah, just remember it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the journey to get to it's the what is it? It's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah. And let's be honest, it's a messy middle. We're oftentimes looking at the front line, right? The starting line and the finish line, and there's a whole messy middle right there. And we
Mm.
think it should be beautiful because we think, well, this is what I see on Instagram and this is what I see on social media, right? All this stuff is curated. But the middle is messy, and it's messy for everybody. I mean, if you think about anyone who's accomplished anything, I mean, Steve Jobs fired from his own company, right? Running his company out of his garage when he first started. There's so many like start, stop, go backwards, start again, try again. Just in his story, for example, let alone every other person that maybe you look up to or you admire.
Mm.
That middle is really messy. And so it is also being okay with it being messy sometimes.
And just pushing through it.
Yeah, you have to ask yourself the question, do I like what I'm doing?
Mm.
Do I like where I am? Do I like where I'm going? I ask that question. I stop every quarter and I do a little like reflection activity for myself. This is part of my goals and how I, move through life. But I set it on my calendar and I spend a half day at the end of each quarter. So, end of March, I'll sit down and I'll just do a little assessment and think about, all right, what's been going on for the last 3 months? Do I like this stuff? Is this making me happy? Am I happy? How do I feel? And then if I stay on this path, do I like where this path is taking me? Am I good with this trajectory? Sometimes I am. And I'm like, yeah, let's keep doing this. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'm really not. And that means it's time to change. Now, that
Mm.
change might be immediate, or it might take me a couple of months to get to that change, but I know it's going to happen. So, stopping and doing a check in, and a lot of it you can feel actually within your body, right? Our body tells us amazing things. If you are thinking about all the things you've been doing and you're like, you have a pit in your stomach and you're like, oh, I'm so miserable, it's probably a sign that you probably need to change what you're doing. We're never stuck. I think we think that the opposite of stuck is like this amazing success. The opposite of stuck is action. Taking an action. One small action gets you unstuck. So if you feel stuck, like, oh, I'm not really happy with what I'm doing, all you need to do is take a little action. Small action, doesn't have to be big, but take some action to start shifting that. And so doing these regular check-ins for me, that has really allowed me to design my path. Do I like where I am? Do I like where I'm going? No, I'm going to change. Okay, I'm going to shift it. And the change might be dramatic. Sometimes it's a U-turn. Sometimes it's a left turn. Sometimes it's just a little bit to the right or to the left, and it's just a little shifting of that path. So checking in regularly, I think, is really, really powerful. I think there's no more important activity that we can do other than reflection, just taking time to reflect.
Running your all your businesses, your podcast, your scheduling, your consultant program, and your speaking events. What does the average day for Tanya Dalton look like?
Mm. It's a good question because people usually assume I'm really, really busy, and I'm really, really not. I'm really
Mm.
not. I'm very selective about what I say yes to. That's part of what I teach people. And I really believe if I'm going to talk to people and teach people about these things, this is how I have to live my life. And people get really excited because they hear productivity, right? It's like, oh, everybody wants to be more productive. It's this shiny object, and they come in the door and they're like, oh, I want to be more productive. And I'll kind of lean in and go, it's really intentional living. It's really about understanding what your priorities are and choosing what you want to do. So for me, I'm really selective about what I say yes to. So if I'm in a season where I'm writing a book, then I am getting up early. A lot of times I'll get up at 4:30 in the morning to do my writing
Mm.
for my book. House is nice and quiet. I'm able to really like my brain is in a good place, and then I have the rest of the day to do other things. So if I'm writing my books, I'll get up at like 4:30. But that's And I'm not a morning person, by the way, but it's easy because I'm very excited about my books, right? I'm really passionate about what I get to do. But I start my day and I make sure I'm really intentional, especially with my morning time, of how do I want to block off my time? And I do like blocks of time. I make sure that I have incorporated plenty of breaks. And breaks for me generally means going outside, unless
Mm.
it's cold like it is today, here at 9 degrees or whatever.
Yeah, seriously.
Um, that's my time to get the bulk of my work done is in the morning because usually after lunch, I do lunch and then I generally do an hour of learning every day. So what am I
Mm.
passionate about? What am I excited about learning today? And then I generally do at least an hour of meditating in the afternoon. And then usually my kids are coming home. So the bulk of my work is done in the mornings, because I'm really intentional and I don't say yes to everything. So you listed that I do a bunch of things. I don't do them all at the same time, right? I'm not
Mm.
writing books as I'm doing like a big speaking tour, as I'm, doing big initiatives with my company, or as I'm doing all these things. I'm very selective and I lean into a priority and then I counterbalance. It's like riding a bike. I
Mm.
lean, right? And when you ride a bike, you're going on a perfectly straight line, which is great if you're really happy if you're going, but we generally want to turn right or left, right? You have to lean to the left if you want to go left. So it's leaning into a priority for a season and then counterbalancing, and then leaning
Mm.
into a priority and then counterbalancing. And it's this series of like leaning and counterbalancing that allows me to look like I'm doing a lot of things, but I'm not doing them all at the same time. Life is choose your own adventure. So you get to choose. So how long of a season do I want to lean into writing a book? The initial book writing process probably takes, for the first manuscript, takes me anywhere from like 3 to 5 months. So 3 to 5 months of leaning into the writing part. I mean, I have edits and all those things later, but and then I can counterbalance and then I can
Mm.
do something else, right? So yeah, just having those seasons and thinking about life as being seasons. Our our bodies are cyclical, right? Just like the tides, just like the seasons outside. And so we have to keep in mind that we have these seasons where we're in doing a lot and it's peaking, and then we have seasons where we need to rest and seasons where we need to lean in. So really understanding you're not constantly go, 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 go. That's how we burn ourselves out. That's how we get exhausted.
What are some of the pros and cons of the way you work now, of your
Mm.
career and the style of your intentional work?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, I think the pros is I'm not exhausted every day.
Mm.
I make sure and I prioritize things that are important to me, learning, meditation time, family time. Those are always blocks that are consistently in my schedule because I know those are important for my mental health, for my mental well-being. It's really important for my family, all of those things. So that's really a pro. I guess a con of the way that I work would be, I guess I could produce more books. I could produce more things, but I don't think I really would. I don't think they'd be as good as what I do now. I'm really, really proud of what I create. I think we live in a world where we get really caught up in quantities. How many books? How
Mm.
many hours? How many things did you check off your list? And it's truly never about the quantity. It's always about the quality. I would rather do fewer, better, deeper things than to do 10 times as many and do them half as well. I'm
Mm.
always interested in going deep, whether I'm talking about my work or my relationships, my friends, all of those things. I'd rather go deep and get to really who I am authentically and what I desire and what I want out of these things. What do I want out of these relationships? What do I want out of what I'm doing for work? I think so often we think about work and we think of it as this goal, right? This goal that we're working towards. And I often say goals are not the goal. Goals are the vehicle for the life we really want. So, what does that life look like? Work is the vehicle for getting you to that life. So, work needs to be not the end goal, it's how I get there. At the end of,
Mm.
end of my life, where do I want to be? When I'm 60 years old, when I'm 70 years old, where do I want to be? And then how do I make work so that works for me getting to that versus being so focused on what's my revenue, how many products am I selling, how many books have I pushed, how many, all those things.
What does success look like to you?
Mm. For me, success looks like, first of all, from a health standpoint, that I'm flexible and I'm strong and I'm able to move my body, which is why I have certain goals that I do now, right? Where I go to Pilates, I go for walks, I'm outside, I do stretches. I don't worry about like heavy, big muscles and working out that way. I'm thinking about the longer term. So that's what health looks like. Relationship wise, I want really deep friendships and I want to have a really strong relationship with my kids and their spouses one day and their kids one day. And so I make sure I'm investing a lot of time in my family, in my immediate family. I invest in a few relationships of people that I'm friends with. I don't try to be best friends with everyone. I have a few key people where I'm like, I want to invest more time, more energy,
Mhm.
more resources into those people, right? Obviously, it looks like, I'm making good money and I'm able to make an impact with the money I make. So finances is definitely a part of it. But this is the thing. It's like there's this holistic version of us that we need to think about. Who am I spiritually, financially, relationally, all of those things. That's part of what I
Mm.
think about who I want to be, not just I want to make X amount of money, right? Because what does that money do for me? That's not the money that makes you happy. It's what you do with the money. It's what you do with the career. It's what you do with the business you've grown. It's what you do with the fame, if fame is your thing, right? What do you do with it? That's the heart of what makes you happy.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.